last episode we did chapter 8 and part of chapter 8, and then the covenant with Noah. Okay, now the flood has happened. Noah waits until 150 days where the waters come down, and then he gets out of the ark after sending a raven and doves to check on what's going on out there. And the third dove goes and doesn't come back, signifying it found a place to rest.
It's the same dove. It just goes out.
Same
3
dove,
times.
exactly. Yes, yes.
Right.
One goes out, comes back because he has no place to sit, and then comes back with an olive branch, seeing that the water has come down enough where the trees are showing up again. And then the third time it doesn't come back, as in signifying it has found a place to rest. And then this is when Noah and his family and all the birds and all the creatures come out of the ark. And then the covenant with Noah is that after God smells the pleasing aroma, I have just like that part, the barbecue of the clean, made of clean birds and animals. He says that I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. So basically saying that I acknowledge that you guys are evil bastards from the youth, so I will not destroy you again in this manner. I'm just adding the in this manner part. God doesn't say that. He promises he will not destroy us, but I think he does a couple of times. Madeline again.
Well, and you're right. He specifies here in chapter 9, he's not going to do it with water.
Oh, just specific, not with water.
Yeah, he's not going to do it with water. And the part where he mentions he's not going to curse the ground again is a callback to the cursing of the ground when Adam left paradise. And so when Noah was born, if we remember back, the scriptures there said this person, it's something along the lines of, will relieve us from the curse of the ground. Mm-hmm. And so this is Noah relieving humanity of the curse of the ground. And we'll see here in this chapter that Noah grows a vineyard. So it starts to become easier for him to grow things.
Okay.
It's kind of the implication here. It's not a big part of the story, but it's kind of the implication here.
Interesting. Well, grapes are an interesting choice because grapes are very hard to grow and maintain and understand. Actually, it's a very challenging task to grow grapes. We have planted multiple grapes just now. Some straight,
did you?
Yes, some straight from Armenian variety from Armenia. It's struggling because obviously the climate is different. It's a lot more humid here, so we're curious to see how it happens. But one of the grapes we put down actually has grape on it. But this is the very first young branch.
Are you going to bury them?
Well, probably, although in Tennessee the winters are not so harsh, so most likely we don't have to. In Armenia the winters get very harsh, that's why they bury it. So he's referencing last episode that I talked about the grapes and how we bury them and then bring them back up. So if you haven't seen episode whatever, chapter 8, that's where you'll find this conversation. And also subscribe, people. That will help us a lot.
Okay, chapter 9. Mm-hmm. Genesis. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. As I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. And for your lifeblood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from man. From his fellow man I will require a reckoning of the life of man. Quote, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image.
Ooh, we should, I think, stop here for now.
Okay.
So this is fascinating to me because it's very interesting how it's hitting me very differently this time than the previous times that I've read, because it's all of a sudden I'm starting to see why we talked about ancient folklore, like folk tales and stuff like that we sometimes don't understand. And this time around, it's hitting me in that way, perhaps quite a bit, because culturally, You know, like in America, you guys will eat raw beef, like raw fish, raw stuff. For us, that's like horror. That's like, whoa. And I'm reading this right now, and it's hitting me in that way where it's just like, you will not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood. So basically, just like we thoroughly cook everything, sometimes overcook to a degree where there's nothing left before we eat it. And then it's just like very interesting to just all of a sudden recognize, like, oh wow, okay, it was such a cultural shock to see food uncooked here. So that's one that jumps out at me. And then another thing that jumps out, I guess, the fact that I never really captured this in the first creation story, but it's actually saying that now, unlike the last time, every beast will be food for you too. Basically, it's saying, before I gave you the plants to eat, now you can be eating the animals too, as long as they're not alive, or, you know, they're fully killed and bled out.
Right. Exactly. Before this, they were vegetarian, which is what the story is telling us here. This is the first permission to eat living creatures as food. Prior to this, they just ate plants. I mean, after all, Cain, sacrificed his plants to God, and Abel sacrificed his sheep. But the implication is that you keep sheep not just to eat, but also for their wool to cover you,
Wool,
right?
milk.
Yeah, wool, milk, and so forth. And this is the first time that God is saying you can eat animals as well. You just can't drink their blood. Do not eat their blood. Right? You must drain them of their blood, for in their blood is life, and you shall not drink their blood. And in fact, we go all the way back to paradise, and in paradise, they didn't even eat the plants. In the story, they ate the fruits of the plants. Like the plants weren't even dying, right? It was just the fruits. So nothing, it was such a paradise that nothing died. And now we're moving, the next step is now, well, animal or plants can die for food, and now animals can die for food as long as you don't drink their blood.
And I wonder, like, for me, it's drink the blood is one thing, but also it says, do not eat flesh with its life, comma.
Right. That is its blood. So you must drain all the blood out of the meat before you eat it.
Draining the blood out is one thing, but I feel like cooking it is another. I feel like you gotta cook for that blood to entirely leave leave the flesh. But that could be just me, yeah.
Yeah, and this is also the people of this time would understand what's being referenced here with the blood is the rituals that the prior civilization was engaging in, which created the Nephilim, right? So, as this to understand the story as they understood it at the time, is that this previous civilization was practicing these blood rituals that created all these evil beings, this Nephilim, these giants that ruled the world, that roamed the world, and slaughtered people, that was taking over, that God wiped out. And so God says, okay, you can eat meat, just do not even drink blood, because I don't want you engaging in these rituals that created the giants. That is why
it's like almost like the first rule, even though this is not part of the 10 Commandments. It's like a rule, starting the rules, I guess, for humanity.
Right.
You can eat all of it, but just don't do this. Yeah.
Right. Don't drink it. Yeah. Do not consume the blood. And this, of course, is going to tie into much, much later on what is practiced with Jesus. But we'll get to that later.
And for your lifeblood, I will require a reckoning. From every beast, I will require it, and from men. So it's interesting because it's saying that both from people and the beasts, it will expect the same almost. Is that what I'm reading? I think it's saying, this is a weird English, but I think it's saying I'm going to expect you hold each other accountable.
That's one way of reading it. I mean, a life for a life is a simple way of reading it here. It's also hinting at the practice, and which is going to be explicated later on in Leviticus, the practice of rituals, or not rituals, I'm sorry, sacrifice. So eventually the Israelites are going to be taught that before they can eat any meat, it also has to be sacrificed. So that is, some of it has to be given to God. So you can't just go out and kill an animal and eat it. If you kill an animal, you have to take some of it and give it to God first, and then you can eat the animal. So you can't eat any animal that isn't a part of a sacrifice. And it also mentions from man, which we'll get to later on in Exodus, where every man has to be consecrated to God. That is, a sacrifice has to be made to God for every human that's born in order to redeem that person. So what we're hinting here is redemption. But so anytime you eat meat, you have to share it with God. God has to have some of it. And every person that's born, you have to give God some meat. So, and you're gonna, it's like, why do you have to do that? And we'll get into that when we get to Exodus.
The man gotta eat. Loves barbecue.
God's hungry, you know?
Yeah.
You've seen what happens when he gets hangry?
It destroys Earth. No, for me, it's hitting a little bit differently because I'm seeing chapter 9 starting with, that entire section is not just about food, right? To me, it seems like it's just bam, bam, bam. Like it's different things. It's saying, okay, now you go ahead and be fruitful and multiply. That's one. The fear of you and the dead of you shall be upon beast of the earth and upon every bird, blah, blah. So basically sounds like it's saying you will be the dominant creature.
Right.
And then the next, you can actually have meat and animals for food as well, not just plants, but do not take the life or do not, you bleed it out. Don't drink the blood or eat it raw. I'm just going to throw it in there. And for your livelihood, I think this is already something different. For your livelihood, I will require a reckoning. For your livelihood, I will require a reckoning, as in you gotta become conscious and hold each other accountable. From every beast, and from fellow men to other men, reckoning for the life of man. So basically, I will require all of you to both hold yourself accountable and hold others around you accountable. That's what I'm reading. And then whoever sheds the blood of man, this is already something different. Now it's talking about killing each other. By man shall his blood be shed. Basically, if you kill someone, somebody else will probably kill you. For God made man in his own image. That one I'm not fully understanding, unless it's saying that because I made you in my own image, if you kill somebody, then revenge, karma will get you or something. I don't know.
Well, and it does say later in the Bible that vengeance is the Lord's, right? Vengeance is for God, right? So that's not for you to take upon yourself, it's for God to do. So, and I think what you're reading, is both is true here, because the literal and the metaphorical, for something to be spiritually complete, both of them are playing at the same time, right? And so rituals are a way of expressing the spiritual, the metaphorical, but it's also a representation of the literal here. So yeah, I mean, a life for a life, you know, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his image, and you be fruitful, multiply, increase greatly on the earth, and multiply it. And for every beast that they consume, God says, for the lifeblood, for every beast I will require of it. Right, so if you're going to eat something, you got to give me some of it. And for every man, you got to share.
It's not going to stop sounding hilarious to me.
Don't hog the barbecue from God. And then for every man that you kill, God's going to kill a man in return.
Wait.
Right, there's going to be an equal play.
I'm sure your voice was captured on the recording, which is important, but I didn't hear you personally.
Yeah, so for every beast that you kill to eat, you have to give some to God. And for every man that's killed, God will kill a man also, right? So that there's equal here. All of that's being kind of said together. It's all at once.
Okay, let's continue.
Okay. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, "Behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. It is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth." And God said, "This is a sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth, and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. The waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. And God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth.
So here, God sounds very human to me, right there, because he has to put reminders just like we do. It's a very fancy, weird type of reminder. Put a bow in the clouds, but he's
It's his
putting a
little
reminder.
sticky note.
Yeah,
His,
yeah.
his rainbow sticky note up in the clouds. So that's what this is here. So this is discussing a rainbow, right? His bow in the clouds. There's a bit of an allegory to like a bow and arrow, so like warfare, like killing.
I
But he's going to
totally
set it
thought
in
it
the
was
clouds.
talking about a bow, but
But
okay.
but yeah, so this is the rainbow in the clouds.
Oh, I like that
So
even
when
more.
the
It
storms
doesn't change the
gather,
story, yeah.
the rainbow is a symbol that God's not, even though it's about the rain, God's not going to destroy all of creation with water again.
Okay.
There's the rainbow is a sign of his covenant, and to understand a covenant, it's like a promise. Almost a one-sided promise. It's not a contract where both parties negotiate. It's one party. It's a king saying to his subjects, "This is my promise to you. If you do these things, this is what you can expect. If you break it, this is what you can expect. This is my promise to you as long as you do, what I'm asking from you."
Takes me funny places. It's like, it's like I'm getting emotional and angry. Here's water, but no, just let me put something pretty out. Like just here. I remember. I'm not supposed to destroy you. Why won't you marvel at this beautiful sight right now? Rainbows are beautiful, fascinating.
They are beautiful. I don't know if I should go into this. There's some deep, deep metaphysics here that we can discuss. And I believe, I say that the rainbow is actually one of, how do I put this? The best descriptors of the creation of all of reality is through the rainbow. So how is a rainbow formed, right? A rainbow is formed when light travels through the water droplets in the sky, and then that fractals out into all of its colors. So at the very, very beginning of the Bible, we had the creation story, God's spirit hovering over what? Hovering over waters. And as the very first act is to say, let there be what? Light. That light, where is that light going to go? Into the waters that he's hovering over. And as it passes through the waters of chaos, the waters of uncreation, it comes out the other end as the fractal pattern and glory of all of reality. It is, in fact, God himself as light passing through waters that creates the reality that we experience, from white light to the multiplicity of everything else. And so this is represented not just in the creation of the rainbow, but also the flood here. Same thing in baptism. The idea of where water represents chaos and also death, where baptism is also going into death and coming back out. God's light passing through the chaos of death and coming out the other side in glory with all the colors of reality. Now you may say I'm taking a little bit too far here, but I think that I spent a little time thinking about it here. This is really a depiction of how the cosmos is made.
Yeah, it's sometimes we take something that stands out and then think it, and then time passes, something else happens in life, then that element comes back into your thought, and it just over time evolves into meaning something. So definitely have not gave that much time on rainbows yet, but but
You don't think about rainbows all the time?
but I have marveled over them like by a lot. And what I would do sometimes when I was in my land and the sun would hit the oak trees like in a really beautiful way, and especially in spring the oak leaves would look very fluorescent, like green yellowish green. And then I would take the hose and actually just keep sprinkling water and stand at a particular angle and just watch those colors appear. So definitely had fascination, but haven't thought outside of the physics that why it happens. I haven't really thought too much spiritually on the rainbow. But it is actually interesting as you were talking. I realized that it has been a very long time I've seen a rainbow. And
Right.
and Tennessee is very rainy and sunny immediately after. So I'm just like, huh, interesting.
It feels like I don't see them as often as it did as a child, you know.
Is Bill Gates succeeding in blocking the sun?
I mean, maybe it's because we're, you know, as a kid we were outside more often, but you're outside pretty
I'm
often, you
I'm
know.
outside a lot. Although I
Yeah.
have to say Tennessee is mountainous, and I'm on top of a ridge, so it's very possible it gets covered up by other mountains, peaks, and trees and stuff. So maybe it's just
If God doesn't see that rainbow, he's going to flood you. You know, he needs that rainbow there to remind him not to
hey, or
flood your
maybe it's a
area.
good sign that all this mayhem is happening, all this war, and God isn't angry yet enough to show that He's angry. Then put a rainbow that is remembering the covenant. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, what's being set up here is, you know, God's not going to destroy with water, but he will destroy with fire. Later on, the idea of being baptized by fire, that God is going to eventually destroy the world through fire rather than water.
I mean,
And,
fire
you
is
know, that's
far
some,
more painful probably than water, I would say.
it is. Well, yeah, it definitely it
He's like,
depends on
I'm
how
gonna let
fast
it come to
you're
a
burning.
peak, come to a head,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to burn you. The worst possible pain you can imagine.
But
Which,
we do know that the world is going to end by fire, though. We know that as a scientific fact, that the sun at some point will eventually explode and the earth will be completely destroyed by fire.
I
So
mean,
we
if we
know that
don't
that is
explode
true.
ourselves through nukes first, but yeah.
That's true. You know, maybe we destroy ourselves through fire, you know. God, you know, saved Noah from being destroyed by all the evil in the rest of the world. And so perhaps the fire that destroys the world, you know, in the future is actually the fire that humans cause. And it's only those who are seen by God, like Noah, righteous, that he's going to save from the fiery destruction that we create. Who knows?
But in reality, those who have bunkers, the millionaires, billionaires, will be saved. We'll find out.
Temporarily. Right. They built it in the right spot.
See, here's like we're recording multiple episodes, and as we record and as we go on, I become more and more just playful and what is
Yeah.
it? Somewhat tired and delirious.
Well, I will say to finish this part off here, there's a reason why the album cover for Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon is so gripping. The imagery of the prism with the white light coming in one side and the rainbow coming in out the other side.
Pink
And
Floyd,
so,
what is it? Dark Side? Side
Dark
of the
Side of
Moon.
the Moon, right? Very famous visual imagery. And it's captivating because I believe that things that are deeply metaphysically true are naturally captivating to us. And so that right there is the light of God passing through the waters, or passing through crystal, or passing through Christ, through something that's clear and pure. And by passing through something that's structured but pure, which is what a crystal is, or a water droplet, structured but it's pure, that it can actually turn into all the colors of reality.
Man, crystals are fascinating. And it's like biblically, like when it goes through and describing all the crystals that it's forming in different regions and stuff, it is fascinating. I was doing construction, and I don't know if you can see.
Oh,
This is just a
is that a
little
quartz?
clear quartz. Okay, do we want to continue? Noah's
Uh,
descendants?
we can finish a chapter. The story completely shifts right here, though. It goes really off the rails for a second. So
That's fine. I think it's
completely
perfect midpoint to continue, finish off, and then
okay.
call it an episode.
This story is going to need some explanation, but I'll read through it, and then if you haven't heard the story, you're going to be like, "What the hell?" And then I'll try to explain it.
I mean, I've read this before, but every time you read, you just feel like you're just honing on something new. So it's as
Yeah,
if
this is one of the ones that you read and you're just like, "What?" And you just skip it and just keep going.
Okay.
So, okay.
The sons of
Noah's
Noah.
descendants. So God established a covenant. The sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, which is actually pronounced Japheth because there's no J in Hebrew. Ham was the father of Canaan. Now, it's mentioning this at the very outset because this is going to be important to understand. So you already know that Ham's the father of Canaan. And again, we have another Canaan. We know if someone's named Cain, probably something bad associated with it.
Well, but it's also very interesting because Canaan is also a region. Canaanites, people, like Jewish
Right.
people,
Yep.
I think link back to Canaanites, ancient Canaanites.
The descendants of Cain here, actually.
Okay.
So let's continue, and we'll see why. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these people of the whole earth was dispersed or populated. Right. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. The soil's not as cursed anymore, so he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. So he's naked. And Ham, the father of Canaan, again, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it on both their shoulders and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. Let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died.
So much to unpack here.
What the hell was that about?
Okay. To me, there's so much to unpack besides the bizarreness of Noah, like having a mental breakdown of his own guilt or shame or something. Because he's drunk. Nobody told you to get drunk naked and fall asleep. Then you
Right.
curse your grandson.
I mean, we all know what happens when you get drunk. You tend to just pass out, sometimes not fully clothed.
Yeah, but this is what I don't like here, which we're not necessarily saying that this is not God doing this. This is Noah already going the wrong direction to me. Because take responsibility of your drunkenness and admit that next time you should not get drunk and pass out naked and call it good. But no, you can't possibly see your own mistake here and you curse your grandson. Anyway, but that's from the personality or human condition view, right? Like that's just me. That's what coming to me. This is totally Noah is in the wrong here, to me. But there are a lot of other things that we can spend so much time on, but I'll try to not spend too much time on. And at some point, this is where we will probably have an episode strictly about this genealogy, because it becomes very important when it says this is where all the people came from. So because I am a nut job, I have for years now been studying DNA and mapping it to see if there's any connection between the Bible and actual DNA, that like actual DNA evidence of not Japheth or Shem specifically, not those people, but where does the lineages go to? And it actually maps out perfectly to the Bible. Way too perfectly. It's a little bit bizarre. But my criticism of Western theologians, they always, again, the second they hit a point where they don't recognize something, they stop. So oftentimes they end in Rome. But not all roads lead to Rome, actually, at all. So the genetic stuff, I want to quickly say, it all connects to Eurasia. So Eurasia is a big section, but that's Armenian Highlands, Iran, Georgia, a little bit below, a little bit Mesopotamia. So basically, the whole biblical regions that are described consistently actually end up genetically and archaeologically confirming to be real. And the Westerners, why do I have criticism of them? Is because they leave out some very important cultures that link to Shem or Ham or Japheth, and they just stick to the popular ones that they know about, like Greece and whichever ones have been more popular. So instead of going to the roots and making sure that they are thorough, they end up cutting the cord too soon because maybe they don't recognize or they don't speak a certain language or it's just too much work to get to the bottom. So Japheth, definitely the Armenian link is with Japheth, so is Greek, so is Persian, so is many of the Indo-European branch, really, when it comes to linguistics, come from Japheth. And then Shem oftentimes is more Semitic people. And time-wise, it's uncanny. Like when it talks about Noah began to be a man of soil and planted his vineyard, right? He comes down on Ararat Mountain, comes down to Ararat Valley, and plants his first grapes. And what do we find? I'm going to send this to you so you can look at it as we're speaking at the same time. I don't know if I can project this on the screen properly. It might not capture all of it well. This one. So the screen is not going to capture very nicely because it's calibrated for a different thing. But Areni-1 cave, which was an expedition done in Armenia, in a wine region actually, that exposed. I actually have been to this cave. It's very fascinating to see that they found the most ancient known wine facilities, that like intentional wine making, actually, with the pots, with the vessels, with the press, with fermentation, with the entire winemaking process that we can still use today. So not just some jars with like some residue in it, rather actual winemaking facilities in Areni caves. And the same cave actually was interesting. It found a shoe. This is the cave entrance right here. And then many things were found in that cave, but also a shoe that is dated back to be the oldest known leather shoe in like actual stitched up shoe, not just a fabric or not just a random thing, but actually purposefully stitched up shoe. So why do I bring this up? Because especially the wine one is very interesting to me, that it confirms, it archaeologically checks out even from that story. It's like you read that story, you don't think anything of it, and then all of a sudden expedition happens that dates back 6,100 years, which is very close to that era if you do mathematics. It would link back to pretty much similar time that Noah would have come down from Ararat and plant his grapes and get drunk and then curse his own grandson. I'm just saying, it's very, very interesting that.
Yeah, it very well could. I mean, who knows? Maybe it is Noah's. Maybe it's his equipment right there.
Well, I'm not suggesting it's this one exactly is his equipment, because wine residue was found in Georgia as well, in Iran as well. But again, it's all the same regional area. Right. Some in just jars with tartaric acid, which doesn't necessarily confirm winemaking, but it confirms at least fermentation of grapes, or at least the existence of grapes. So, and some of those date back 55 BC, 45 BC, 6,000 BC, depending, the winemaking facility is more advanced and more civilized. So doubt this was Noah himself, but the region still holds the record for the oldest known fragments of winemaking and grape DNA. Here, the grape DNA was actually confirmed in this, like the seeds and the DNA was confirmed to be that ancient, which is absolutely fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll also say that their dating might be accurate, but it also might be off if we're going to consider a flood. And And I'm just throwing this out there in the sense that it's well known that there's a phenomenon called the freshwater reservoir, um, or sometimes saltwater. Whenever something is submerged in water and then you do carbon dating, it can artificially add hundreds and hundreds, even 1,000 years to the carbon dating. And that's simply because the carbon that's held within water gets imbued into the material that you're dating. And so it creates an artificially long date that isn't accurate. And so if there was a regional flood in the area, it's very likely that the dating of any artifacts that suffered through a flood could be way off from their dating.
So I do want to comment to that because the carbon dating, the actual radiocarbon dating, is quite accurate, but it only goes as far as 50,000 years. Anything above that is just really not. And anything that we date that's above 50,000 is actually highly inaccurate. And that's where there's a lot of different technologies. I think 6 different technologies that I was able to link to that people use. And sometimes they use 2 to be sure, but then both are exactly the same type of faulty. If it's been exposed to heat, to water, to whatever, and then you can just completely throw off. Like, this is where we talked off camera a little bit about the fossils found in Africa. I don't want to go too far into it. The type of dating that they're using is extremely impossible statistically to not have been disturbed, because it's saying that if there was any earthquake, if there was any water intrusion, if there was any sunlight exposure, even while you're transporting, any kind of disturbance can throw it off by hundreds of thousands of years. You're like, okay, then that's just not a method we can rely on at all. But radiocarbon dating, which is more when you have a seed and you extract the DNA out of it, when you have a metal or a leather shoe, I think that a lot of the inconsistencies happen when you're just trying to only measure the rocks and soils around it rather than the thing itself. Oftentimes when they find fossils, they cannot extract DNA because it's too old, or maybe nothing has survived, no living thing has survived. Then they start trying to date the rocks and stones around it, which becomes very, very inaccurate.
Right. Radiocarbon dating, and I don't want to send anyone the wrong direction, is generally very, very accurate. And the only time it becomes very inaccurate, one of the only times, is if what you're testing has been submerged in water for some time, then that can throw off the dating by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And so I only mention that because we're talking about a flood story. And so if there was, it doesn't have to be a global flood, but a regional flood in Mesopotamia, or any place where there's like a river valley, where most, early civilizations developed in river valleys. If there was a lot of flooding that happened at one period in time, like the 4.2 kiloyear event, then it can affect a lot of the dating of artifacts. So,
but to counter your point, to debate your point, a lot of these things would have come up way after the flood, right? Not before. So these are all things that confirm after flood civilizational restart, not after. And then this is a very high plateau, obviously. Very, very high plateau.
And I'm not saying this specific stuff here, but just in general, anything that's found in an area that could have, been part of a flood,
which is everything ever,
which kind of is everything ever, but if there are certain areas that are more prone to flooding than other areas, right? And so that can affect some of the dating. Well, I'm not saying that to tell people not to trust the dating in science, but a lot of scientists don't consider the fact that certain areas are prone to flooding, and that could throw off some of their dating by a few hundred years.
So Armenia is prone
kind of
to
a tangent
volcanoes.
I went off on here, but
Armenia historically is prone to volcanic movement and earthquakes, not flooding necessarily, because we don't have the closest ocean is what and where. It's not that, like, we have seas around. Armenia, modern day Armenia doesn't, sadly, but we have the Black Sea and Caspian Sea on opposite ends, which Black Sea deluge is what is potentially talked about to have caused to have been associated with the flood myth confirmation, because archaeologically there's such thing as the Black Sea rose or got over, some waters came into it. I should remember my facts, but there's basically an event archaeologically that confirms the flood in that region for sure. But then this would have been way after, when the waters have come down by a lot, and now you're sitting at a very high peak, actually, a very high elevation sector where you restart life, right? You start planting your grapes and whatever, and then after that, no flood events have been recorded in this region like that.
Right, right. And we can go into more detail when we do that episode that dives more into the archaeology. I tend to tie the flood of Genesis with the 4.2 kilo year event, which is an event that wiped out most civilizations throughout the whole world, generally described as a drought, but certain areas of the world had tons of flooding. And basically every civilization on the planet just almost got wiped out completely. Like not all the people died, but the civilizations collapsed all over the globe, some by drought, some by flooding. In the Middle East, and Mesopotamia experienced both drought with flooding with a drought, and it lines up perfectly with the genealogy of the Bible. Actually, and we'll dive more into that detail when we do that episode.
Okay, very cool.
But
very cool.
I do want to discuss what the hell's going on with Noah being naked and cursing his grandson because his son saw him naked, so he cursed his fifth grandson. Like what's happening here? Like, why are they telling this story if it doesn't make any sense? And it's because it does make sense to the people who the story was being told to. And so in order to make sense of the story, you have to flip all the way over to the book of Leviticus, which describes the rules, regulations for the Hebrew society. And chapter 18 discusses sexual immorality, sexual impropriety.
Okay.
And I'll read you here. It's chapter 18 of Leviticus, verses 7 and 8. It says, "The nakedness of your father or the nakedness of your mother you shall not uncover. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's wife you shall not uncover. It is your father's nakedness." So what's being said here is uncovering someone's nakedness is a euphemism. They had euphemisms back then, just like we have today, right? Just if I say I slept with someone, that doesn't mean I just cuddled up on the couch and cuddled with them all night, right? It means I engaged in sexual intercourse with them. But we don't say that because it's not polite to say it in such a way. So we say he slept with this person. So uncovering someone's nakedness is a way of saying you have sex with them. And so in Leviticus, it says your father's wife is his nakedness also, right? So if you uncovered your father's nakedness, it could be saying you had sex with your father, but it could also be saying you had sex with your father's wife, because his wife's nakedness is also your nakedness, right? So the nakedness of your father's wife you shall not uncover. It is your father's nakedness. So if we go back to the story here, Noah gets drunk on wine and he passes out. Ham, because he sees that his father has passed out, he uncovers his father's nakedness. And then Noah curses Canaan, his fifth son. So what's actually happening here is that Ham slept with Noah's wife. While Noah was passed out, Ham had sex with Noah's wife, and maybe maybe not consensually, doesn't say.
So his mother.
And well, it could be his mother. It could, I don't know. I don't remember exactly if it's his direct mother or just Noah's wife.
Well, there's so many people were in the ark,
okay?
Right.
I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. And the product of that is Canaan. So Noah's wife, Ham's mother, got pregnant and gave birth to Canaan. And that is why Noah cursed Canaan. That explains why it seems random that he's cursing this one child. But Canaan was the product of an incestuous relationship. And it wasn't just incest. It was an attempt by Ham to usurp his father's authority, because in ancient times, one of the ways to usurp the authority of the king, if you're one of the king's sons, is to create your own lineage from your father's wife, or even from your own mother. Like, it was a different time back then. You were right to bring up genetics. So this is why there's a curse here, because as we know, incestuous reproduction produces bad genes. And so this curse here isn't just Noah being angry that his son created an incestuous son with his wife, with his own mother. But by doing so, you're messing up the genes. And so the descendants of Canaan end up becoming not the greatest society, right? It's starting the process of creating bad genetics and leading to worse societies. And so that's how you understand the story. It doesn't make sense on face value when you first read it, but when you understand the rules of society. Ham slept with his mom, had a kid. Noah said, cursed is that kid and everything that comes from that kid.
So that's very interesting. I have to dwell on this for a moment because this is where it throws it off and makes it not so. Like, it makes it very hard. Like, that rule could well exist completely outside of this story as a rule because, like, let's say culturally I don't know if this is across the board in Christianity, but in my culture, you cannot have a relationship with someone 8 generations apart. And even if it's been 8 generations apart where you have zero connection anymore DNA wise to this person, if you know about it, if you know this is your 8 generation apart cousin, you still do not. That becomes your brother and sister. You just do not touch that. So it's very strict in that regards where I come from. So that makes sense to me just culturally. Then it also makes sense that the obviously it's just disgusting if this is true, right? Like, he just had sex with his mom. What's going on with the mom? Why isn't the mom burning in hell? But also on top of Canaan, and then the poor Canaan is just like has nothing to do with any of these people, right? They're just like, dude, I'm just a product of your behavior and possibly retarded. I don't know, because incest and all. But then everybody at this point,
yeah, that's the curse. It's not so much that Noah's like casting down a curse onto Canaan. He's declaring that Canaan is now cursed because he's a product of incest and therefore is going to have some genetic deformities that are going to be continued to pass on right through his lineage. And so now Canaan is cursed with that genetic deformity.
Very interesting. It's very scientifically it's accurate. Obviously incest causes defects and a lot of problem with the DNA. That checks out accurate. But where it gets thrown off, it says, okay, so if I was to read the sons of Noah, lay uncovered in his tent. So this is where it just doesn't make sense because it's clearly telling a story that I don't know if it connects to Leviticus, the one you read. Can I say that? Leviticus, okay. He drank the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. He laid naked in his tent. There's no confusion in the language here so far, right? Ham, the father of Canaan, obviously that's important, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside. So this is where it's just like, told his 2 brothers outside and then they came and covered him. It almost sounds like he saw him naked, he looked, as in he didn't, and then he just went and told others to come see in a way. And then the other 2 came and without looking covered him up. And as their faces were turned, and then Noah, he woke up and knew what his young son had done to him. And he said, it's not leaving. It's so clear that it's not leaving a lot of room to connect to that other story. That other story on its own is legit and accurate, both scientifically, if you think what happens to the DNA, and as a rule of thumb in many cultures, I'm sure. But this right here, it's interesting you're seeing it that way but at the same time, it's not leaving any mystery. It's telling the full story in a very clear language. For once, it's not unclear.
It's describing what is considered a grave crime and a disgusting act in a way that's palatable for the society, right? It's being very, very careful to not say things in a very, not even promiscuous, explicit way. Just like we have euphemisms to cover language. Like I said, so-and-so slept with so-and-so, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't even mean they fell asleep. And so what the story is saying, when Noah becomes naked, why is Noah naked? Well, because he just got done having sex with his wife, right? Now he's passed out. His wife's there, right? Ham's mom. Noah sees his father's nakedness, which can also mean his father's wife's nakedness. They're both
So he
considered his
saw and
father's
repeated the
nakedness.
act.
So he saw it, and he did it too, right? And then by doing so, he impregnated his own mother, who gave birth to Canaan, which is why Canaan is cursed, because he is a product of incest. And the way the story is told is a way that is euphemistic and a way to hide, make it palatable for being told as a story to, families and children, in a sense,
Then
to be
what's
passed on.
Yeah, but then what's with the going and telling his brothers?
Well, he told his brothers what he did. He's like, hey, guess who I just knocked up? Our mom.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is this your interpretation, or is this like a kind of like how the story is interpreted by like most Christians or something?
Yeah, this is pretty much the official
This is
interpretation.
It is.
I've seen people try to interpret it as Ham having sex with his father while he's passed out.
Okay, let's
but
not go there. Okay.
I mean, you can read it that way, but then that wouldn't explain why Canaan is cursed. Like, the only way to understand why Canaan is uniquely cursed, is because he's a product of Ham's incest with his own mother, and that's why that curse is on Canaan. Yeah.
Okay, I guess if the story goes on, we might or might not find out.
Well, in the next lineages, we'll see where Canaan's descendants lead to. Well, as a preview of what's coming in a few chapters down the road, we'll see in the next chapter where Canaan's lineage leads to. And part of that are the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Interesting.
Right. So from that act of incest creating problems in the genetic line, down the road leads to some very terrible towns that end
But
up
Sodom
getting
and
wiped off.
Gomorrah is more not a type of thing retarded people would do, type of thing that obnoxiously spoiled brats would do. I've studied Japheth's and Sham's line a lot because it connects to my interests, but I guess I've never really looked into Ham's line. I don't know where that
and it
leads.
leads to the Canaanites, which end up becoming an enemy of Israel.
But then that doesn't check out to me, because Canaanites, actually, Israelis overwhelmingly connect to Canaanites as well. Like current modern genetics uncover a lot of link.
Because they both came from Noah, in the sense, right?
Well, Noah, everybody came from Noah. That's not, we have to more judge from probably the descendants of Noah, because Noah would be the ancestral main thing. And then Japheth, like if I have to connect with our understanding of DNA groups, there's the Caucasian hunter-gatherers, there's the Anatolian farmers, there's the Yamnaya steppe groups, which is more the European later admixtures. There's Iran N, responsible for the Iranian lineage in that sector. And then I think we talked separately and off camera about this, where you just have all these ingredients, and then the same ingredients end up being used in different ratios to create these cocktails, which is the modern different civilizations. So hence Japheth and all of his descendants, Shem and all of his descendants, and Ham and all of his descendants, which start representing nations. And usually they date back right around the same exact time, because it's not necessarily who was older than what, it's just more, these are all nations that started from these lineages. So from that perspective, Jewish bloodline does connect to Canaanite bloodline, just as actually Palestinians and Lebanese do.
Well, in the lineage in chapter 10, it says that the Canaanites end up descending into Palestine and Gaza. Like, it specifically mentions Gaza too. Like, that region is where the Canaanites end up populating.
That's very interesting. Actually, Gaza and 4 other cities around that area, where basically from the dawn of time, the in biblical terms it was called Philistine. The Philistines were there, and I in my episode 10, when I'm doing the Alone podcast, going over some timelines, I actually go into it quite in detail. That in 1050 is when Israel, the 12 tribes, decide to come together and have a king, because they were kind of like just bickering at each other and destroying each other a little bit, and then all of a sudden they're like, holy shit, there's these Philistines, there's this five regions, Gaza being one of them, are being really well led, very organized, ideologically, politically, they were a very organized group that were becoming prominent. They were rising, and then they just recognized that, okay, we better come together and create a kingdom so that we don't get overtaken by these Philistines. So, which is very fascinating modern times to hear the bickering back and forth, like, oh, you didn't exist, it just never existed. And you're like, no, you guys all did exist, and you've been enemies since day one.
Very long time.
Yeah.
The timeline on this is, per the genealogy of the Bible, this is the flood's roughly 2300 BC, 2400 BC, somewhere around there. If you base it just on the timeline going backwards in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And then Abraham's born right around the year 2000 BC. That's where he's around time, which works out astrologically, but we can discuss that later.
So
when we get to Abraham.
So for me, I think the flood checks out more with the archaeological terms, because I think just like in the creation story, I don't think God means like, let there be light, and day one he creates this, and day two he creates that. Like, while I don't think that took 7 days to create, actually, it probably means, each day is 1,000 years, each day is a whatever, it's a timeline. If we consider in that way and just create a little bit more realism to the story, not just magic, then the flood would be right around 7,500 years ago, which then checks out with both archaeology and also checks out with all the evidence of then Noah. Again, like, it didn't take truly just 150 days for this massive flood to all of a sudden full-blown agriculture, right? That's just not how it works. So obviously time has passed, and so then it just makes more sense for things to just be a little bit mix of mythology and history. Like I don't take a lot of these people as real people. I take them as representing people of that time, people of symbols, and as a symbol, then it just makes the younger creationists would have more of a say here. That makes sense, where they would give Earth, let's say, give or take 10,000 years, that they would give flood right around 7,500 years, which checks out with archaeology. Then and then the couple of the things I went over about the grapes and this and that and the findings, the remnants of civilization basically just becoming more advanced, more active. That also is far older than obviously the biblical 2000 BCE thing. And then if you're thinking that Abraham is known to be about 2000 BCE, then we're far away. So,
well, I mean, if you take it on face value, you do the math backwards. Like I said, it's roughly 2300, 2400 BC, 2200 BC. Mm-hmm. Which coincidentally lines up perfectly with the 4.2 kiloyear event that wiped out civilizations across the world. Is it speaking about that? Maybe not. But I think there's a good argument that could be made that that's what it's speaking about.
I did some research on this, like, let's say just Japheth's descendants, just to understand. So biblical time frame, it is all giving what you're saying, right? The biblical time frame is the Japheth being 25 to 2000 BCE, and then all of his descendants, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, whatever, all of them just straight being 2000 BCE. Biblical time frame is doing that. But when I map it to how does it compare to modern DNA and modern DNA stories, it changes a little bit because all of these timelines, like what represents the Armenian genealogy, what represents the Greek genealogy, what represents the Iranian genealogy, Scythians, steppe nomads, Cimmerians, Perugians, Proto-Indo-Europeans, the story matches too perfectly, minus obviously the dates would be a little bit older. Like, let's say all of those would date back more like 4000 BCE, between 3000 to 6000 BCE is where you can see a lot of this genetic formations happening into nations, scientifically. But it matches perfectly otherwise with the Bible's genealogy, minus the 2000 BCE, which being a
Right.
bit too young.
Well, I think that, and I'll end with this, that if you're not trying to take the stories as completely mythological and symbolic, and you're not trying to take it as completely literal,
Yeah.
trying to find that happy medium somewhere in there, then I think the best way to understand a story is not the story of the creation and destruction and recreation of all of humanity, but the creation, destruction, and recreation of a particular line of genetics, of DNA, of a particular line of people, where Adam and Eve were created directly by God, without any previous lineage, formed by God, placed on earth, and then from that line is the story of the Bible. And if you look at it that way, then you don't have to try to figure out, okay, this is literally every human on the planet, the descendants. This is a particular line of people that trace back to a man and a woman that were created directly by God Himself and then placed into the world. And this even has a little bit of a tie-in to the Sumerian flood myth, where the hero is granted eternal life, but he and his wife are said to have been the only two people on the world created directly by the gods, or created directly by God Himself, where everyone else had already existed. But he and his wife were created directly by God. And Gilgamesh goes to them to try to find eternal life, and he doesn't get it. And then he tells them that it's in a plant in the ocean, and he finds a plant, but it gets stolen.
Okay.
But I think that's kind of a happy medium to try to make sense of both ends of the story.
So what I just said, obviously, I was trying to find that happy medium because I do like the scientific, especially when the scientific proves the narrative, the myth. Then you're like, why not merge the two? Because clearly it just merges perfectly well. And okay, so sure, I can give some room for the scientific dating to be a little bit inaccurate, a little bit whatever, because, could be a little bit off. Let's put that aside, then focus on the main moral of the story, where you're saying, so basically then the Canaan line is responsible for Sodom and Gomorrah.
Right.
So obviously it would be unpopular to say in modern day where everybody's so sensitive, but does that mean who messed up here? Like, so doesn't that mean that some of those lineages would have been gone then?
Right. So like in this understanding of the story, right, Adam and Eve are placed in the world in paradise. They're pushed out of paradise once they learn how to be both good and evil. They start having children, and lots of children. Those people start learning are taught by the sons of God, people who come down from the sky, who teach them how to do all these practices that create the Nephilim. Long story short, that lineage turns into a bunch of evil people. That whole Mesopotamia is full of these evil people with these practices. God says, I'm going to wipe out everything I created. Right? In other words, I'm going to wipe out this evil lineage, save Noah and his family because they're good, and then restart this lineage again of people. Right? So it's a story about a particular lineage, and their origin and where it eventually leads to, which is Christ, which is the promise that's given to this lineage. This lineage was formed for the eventuality, which is Jesus, within the story to save everyone in the whole world who doesn't come from this lineage.
Which lineage? The one that he just destroys in Sodom and Gomorrah? I'm confused.
Well, yeah, so you have Adam and Eve Most of them become evil except for Noah. God wipes them all out.
Let's forget about Adam and Eve. Let's go
Right.
from
Then you
Noah
have
because
Noah.
we've yeah.
Right. Noah. He has. They start creating lots and lots of people, and then some of them start
Lots of
going evil again
lineages, lots
because
of nations.
people are just naturally become evil. And one of those lineages lead to Sodom and Gomorrah, right, which we'll get to in a few chapters, and others of them lead to other nations and people. Some of them merge with other nations that are probably already out there.
Yeah.
They'll just spread out.
Sure, like a lot of nations get created, but then there's the Sodom and Gomorrah lineage, which gets destroyed or
those are just
restarts.
2 towns. Yeah, those towns get wiped off. They get destroyed.
Okay.
But there's still plenty of other villages and people and towns and cities and
with their lineages that continue.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I have to. I should have looked at Ham's lineage. I have not at all because it would be good to see what's that's supposed to be responsible. Oh, hold on. The tree that I had should have that. So this tree supposed to be. So we come down here. I've sent this to you, so that's what I'm looking at. The tree from where it says Armenia at the bottom, then the Ark, then Noah, and then spreads into Europe, Africa, Asia. Oops. So we have Japheth or Yapith or whatever going to Europe line. Shem, right at the beginning of the stem, which goes into the Semitic people in Assyria. And then we have Africa. Is Ham Africa then?
Well, towards that way, you have Gaza, towards Egypt, and ends up
Egypt.
Going in that
there's
direction.
Egyptians
spreading
right
all
here.
over the place. Also ends up with Babylon, and
Sidon and Sidon and this is like Egyptian, Arabic, Nimrod. Oh, very interesting. Babylonians, including Babylonians, which get destroyed again. Very interesting. Oh, this is so interesting. I can say so many things that's so politically incorrect. Oh boy.
One thing you'll notice out of Ham's line is Nimrod, who was a giant, right? So the giants end up returning. We'll see that. They're not the same type of giants, but they come back.
I just found out that the mainstream Christian view of this section is incest and Ham banging his mother. That's just great.